Hello and good afternoon. I'm KHOU 11 meteorologist Chris Ramirez, and thank you for watching KHOU 11 Plus. We are going into a hazy day. It is mostly just warm and humid out there. We do have lower rain chances for today, and that's going to last until Friday, all thanks to that Saharan dust layer. Usually brings a lot of dry air, or a layer of dry air in place that really kind of prevents those clouds from getting too high, especially as we head into the afternoon hours. But we could still see an isolated shower or two. We still have that sea breeze frontal boundary that loves to move inland that brings showers during the summertime here across southeast Texas. So just be on the lookout for an isolated downpour or two later on today between maybe the hours of 3 and 4 p.m. So as we head into the weekend, we do have a rain chance starting to ramp right back up for Saturday and into Sunday. Temps right now, we're just warm and humid, upper 80s across southeast Texas. Bush Airport at 89 degrees, Galveston at 90 degrees, Angleton at 88. When you factor in the humidity, especially at the surface level, we are seeing humidity dew points are in the 70s. And so that is actually causing the feels like temps to feel all the more hotter, especially if you are outside. Of course, that humidity really just prevents our sweat from evaporating to cool us off because it's just so a lot of moisture in the atmosphere going into the rest of the summer. So keep that in mind for the next 2 to 3 months if you are new to Houston. So for this afternoon, 93, 94 degrees. Between 3, 4 p.m. we could see more of those stormy conditions across some of our areas, but just be on the lookout. If it's not raining in your area, just pay attention to the heat, especially those feels like temps. Feeling as hot as 103 at Queenswood Lane out of the Heights, Sea Spray Court at 105, 108 at Rutland Street, 106 at Cypress Point Drive. And so look before you log, practice those heat safety measures. Radar right now as of 12:30, not really showing too much of anything here across southeast Texas and across the Houston area. Most of the rain is well off towards the east, towards Beaumont and Louisiana. However, going into this afternoon, maybe between the 2, 3 p.m., we're going to get that sea breeze front that moves inland. What we've been seeing for each and every day for the past few days, that usually loves to bring those isolated showers and storms. So we could see more of a bit of a downpour flare up later on today going towards 3 to 4 p.m. So keep that in mind, that rain chance not all the more at zero. Just keep in mind that we could see those downpours start moving northward from just north of I-10 by 3, 4 p.m. and eventually going into 6, 7 o'clock. We will see that rain chance ultimately come to an end, and we're going to have another quiet night like we've been having. As far as our travel forecast, we are expecting rain chances to ramp up for this weekend, not just for us, but for much of Texas. We are just sitting in between two high pressure systems that's just opening the door for a lot of moisture, a lot of unstable atmosphere, as well as the potential for stormy conditions. And so going into the next 2 to 3 days, if you're heading out to Austin, maybe San Antonio, stormy conditions expected. So the next few days, like I said, we have two high pressure systems on either side of us. We're definitely expecting that to continue for today and tomorrow. However, we're still tracking some Saharan dust. That Saharan dust, like I said, is keeping us dry for today, tomorrow. But then Saturday, that Saharan dust is out of the picture. We're going to see rain chances become a bit more widespread and scattered, and that definitely is going to ramp up those rain chances for those afternoon hours for Saturday and into Sunday. So just keep that in mind as these two high pressure systems that are just on either side of us keeps conditions mostly unstable for the weekend. However, next week, things change. We're going to start seeing that high that was off to the east start building in back across Texas. That is going to clear the rain chances. As you look at our weather model, you're able to actually see how rain is just avoiding that high pressure system. Unfortunately, it means the return of summer-like conditions that we all know too well here across the Houston area. It's been quite cool and quite cooler than what we usually have seen because of the rain that we've had. But just come next week, we could be looking at temperatures in the upper 90s. We might even see some triple-digit temperatures heading into next Tuesday and Wednesday. So just keep that in mind, that if you thought it's warm and hot now, it's just going to become hotter going into next work week, as conditions are going to remain mostly a bit on the less active side for next week. So looking at our flood risk for Saturday, this is important to note here because, of course, as we all know, if you've been paying attention to the news headlines, we've had a significant disaster take place across the Texas Hill Country, and that rain chance is going to once again return by Saturday. So the Storm Prediction Center is including a large portion of Texas under a slight risk for flooding. That is a 2 out of 4. Houston's not really included in that, but just keep in mind if you're heading off towards the west, we are expecting that unsettled weather pattern to continue or to return by this weekend. And so we're going to have to really pay attention to any type of watch or warning that has been issued, especially for portions of central Texas and the hill country by Saturday, as rain chances are going to become a bit more widespread. So looking at our weekend, we are expecting temps to be in the upper 90s, but then like I said, you're going to start seeing that rain become more scattered, a bit more heavy at times going into Saturday and Sunday. And then the good news for next week is that rain chances will be ending. However, I know a lot of recovery is to take place out in the Texas Hill Country, so hopefully that this doesn't hinder any of those recovery efforts going into this weekend. But we're watching the forecast very closely, especially if you are an emergency official heading out to help out west going into the next 2 to 3 days. So today, tomorrow, hazy conditions. We have that Saharan dust. We have a plume of it just right over southeast Texas. It has a layer of dry air, and that really does keep things from forming in terms of storm activity. That dry air prevents those clouds from getting higher, and we are expecting those conditions to remain mostly isolated in terms of storm chance for today and tomorrow. But however, you see that plume just kind of moves off towards the deep south, towards Mississippi and Alabama. That really just opens the door at eliminating that layer of dry air, and it's going to open up the door for that moisture to once again return for this weekend. And so to look at the Atlantic and the Saharan dust status of what we've been dealing with, we still have training plumes of Saharan dust making its way across the Atlantic, and we have another one that's going to be arriving in the Caribbean by this Saturday. It's very likely that this is going to eventually come towards us as we go into next week, and so this is just really not going away anytime soon in terms of the hazy skies. But the good news in all is, as you've heard us all say all too often, this really does a great job at preventing any tropical development, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And we're not expecting to see any tropical systems form in the Atlantic basin, at least for the next 7 days. So things are going to stay rather quiet across the Atlantic basin. This is what we like to see. However, we still have that unsettled weather pattern in place for this weekend. You know, it doesn't take much to cause flooding, not just for us, but you know, the flash flood risk out west. And just keep in mind to just pay attention to the forecast, and you can always do that by downloading the KHOU 11 app. In terms of our temperature outlook, we could be looking at above normal temps going into July 16th to July 20th, and models are sort of predicting that, or sort of an agreement that we could be looking at a drier outlook by the end of July. We're going to have to really pay attention to those trends, especially going into next Monday and Tuesday, because that's when we're going to see those high temps getting up to about 97, 98 degrees. And then for this weekend, though, we're going to once again, the reason why you see 92 is because of the rain chance that's expected to keep us on the cooler side for the weekend. So expecting those conditions to remain mostly just a bit active in terms of our 7-day forecast. And as we head into Monday, we are expecting that rain chance to last. We could still see some isolated storm activity, and then like I said, isolated for Tuesday, Wednesday, but look at those temperatures, 97, 98. We can't rule out some possible triple-digit temps as we head into the next 7 days. So this is our live stream, and I'm going to go ahead and if you're just now joining us, we are definitely talking about the weather pattern that we've been seeing for the past few days. It's been fairly active with a daily rain chance. It seems like we've been dealing with this rainy outlook at least since June, and so we are expecting that to continue, unfortunately. If you're a fan of the rain, the good news in all of this is that either you're gonna have to trade off something. Either you're gonna get the rain and the cooler temperatures, or we're gonna be rainless and have temperatures in the upper 90s or 100s. So I think just as long as we don't get enough rain or too much rain, I think I'm good with the temperatures in the lower 90s to be cooler, especially during the evening hours. So as we look at what we're tracking, lower rain chances for today and tomorrow, you're able to see that haze out there. That's that Saharan dust, and it's a layer of dry air that really does do a good job at keeping rain formation or storm formation at a minimal. We're seeing that also out in the Galveston area. So temps are in the upper 80s. It does a good job at actually keeping us a bit on the cooler side as well. We're seeing 80-degree temps. This time yesterday, we were actually in the 90s by this time. And so we are expecting, however, the dew point, the atmospheric moisture, the humidity, still in the 70s. So even though it's in the 80s, it's going to feel like in the upper 90s because it's just so humid out there. And that's going to be the case, especially as we head into this afternoon. But just keep in mind that we have that sea breeze front. There's different factors here when it comes to southeast Texas weather. We have a sea breeze frontal boundary during the morning hours. It's just offshore. And then usually in the afternoon hours, that sea breeze front loves to move inland, and it brings some isolated shower activity that happens during the summertime. So feels like temps in the triple digits already. If you are out and about, be extra cautious, look before you log, practice those heat safety measures if you are out and about, but just keep in mind that we are seeing, could see some more of those flare-ups of some isolated downpours for this afternoon. It's not going to be as widespread as what we saw yesterday, but we are expecting maybe to see some lightning with those storms as they're going to remain well isolated for this afternoon. So as far as our travel forecast, we are expecting active conditions to once again return for the weekend. We've been sitting in between two high pressure systems on either side of us. We have one high pressure system over the desert southwest that's keeping things mostly dry. They've had high temps in the triple digits up to 114, I believe, out in Las Vegas and in Phoenix and Arizona. But now for us going into Friday, we're going to remain mostly isolated due to that Saharan dust, but then Saturday is when that Saharan dust, that layer of dry air, moves off towards the east, and it's just going to open up the door for more of those scattered showers and storms to return by this weekend. And unfortunately, just expecting those downpours to move through, and then once we head into next week, building high pressure, warming us up. We could see those highs in the upper 90s by the end of the work week, but just keep in mind that the Storm Prediction Center by day 3 from today, they already including a large portion of Texas under that slight risk for flooding, especially includes areas like San Angelo. It's areas just north of San Antonio, and we all know that those rivers that were impacted do flow in this region. So we're going to have to really keep an eye out on the situation, especially for this weekend, as we could see another active weather pattern in place heading into Saturday and into Sunday. So make sure just to heed all those warnings, and not like we're going to see that here in Houston, but just keep in mind that it's always an important reminder to listen to your app notifications if they're warning you about any type of weather alert in the next few days, and as well as we head into the rest of hurricane season for us. So plumes of Saharan dust still dominating across the Atlantic. That's keeping the tropics mostly quiet. No activity expected for the next 7 days. But as we go into looking at the situation for that temperature outlook, it's more likely that models are hinting, even the Climate Prediction Center is hinting, that we could see above average temperatures by the end of the month. And that just means that we might not even see the rain per se as we go into the end of the month there. But looking at our 7-day forecast, highs in the 90s, lows in the 70s, isolated rain chances for today and tomorrow, but then ramping up to more scattered storm activity for this weekend. Have a plan B if you have any outdoor plans, especially during the afternoon hours. That's when we usually see these storms, and that's going to potentially last through Monday. And then by Tuesday, we will expect to see mostly drier conditions and hotter temperatures, hot, humid conditions going on by the middle of the week. And of course, we are tracking the latest weather updates on KHOU.com and on the KHOU 11 app. Make sure to tune in to KHOU 11 News at 4 p.m. I believe our Chief Meteorologist, David Paul, will be with you, giving you the latest weather updates as we head into the rest and into the weekend.